Why haven't I gotten any feedback? I mean, we've had a bunch of showings and no one's leaving any reviews. No one's giving any feedback. Folks, this is what I hear from sellers. And I think that there's a couple of things out there that drive this. But I think that the most important thing that we can do is explain how buyers and or buyer agents work. Here's a disclosure. Not all buyers agents work the same. So, to be a seller, you probably bought a house. Doesn't necessarily have to happen like that. Maybe you inherited the house, maybe you married into the house. But there's a good chance that if you're selling a house, you bought a house. And your buying experience may not be the same one that other buyers are having. So, in my business, when I represent buyers, we sit down, we have a buyer consultation. They say, I want 3 beds, 2 baths, fence for the dog, 2-car garage, within $500,000 in Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene. Get pre-approval, we run around, we go look at the houses, we write an offer, we buy the house. Not every buyer's agent is doing that. And here's why you're getting some showings without getting feedback. And here's why some buyers are canceling without ever coming and seeing the house. So what triggered this is I just had a buyer's agent set up his second showing on a particular listing, and he canceled. He said, the buyers are going to go look in a different city with a different agent right now. And this buyer's agent actually put the home under contract with his first buyer without them doing their due diligence. So the fact that not all buyers agents are created equal is 100% probably the biggest reason why we're seeing inconsistencies with buyers. So there is one thing that has triggered me to give less feedback, and that's some lawsuit area on the buyers, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. Okay, so when I'm out showing houses, especially if I know the agent, I'm going to let them know how the showing went. Hey, it went well. We're going to go see 2 other houses. This one's at the top of their list. This is definitely not the right house for them. The chickens in the back, the neighbor's yard is a big concern for them. They don't want the smell. They don't want the noise. Hey, we went through the house and they really liked the house, but I'm just going to tell you, Mr. Seller's agent, that it kind of smelled like cat pee. That kind of feedback. And the reason that I say, if I know the agent really well, will come out when I talk about the legality of this. But over the course of the last probably 10 years, how buyers agents get their business has changed dramatically. Used to be you had to know someone to get a referral from, or you met them at an open house, or your buddy was buying a house. That's how you got your business. And with the advent of the internet and now big players like Zillow, there are leads that are being sold to buyer's agents. Now, I've never subscribed to this model, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm not here to knock that. That's other videos that I can give my opinion about that, but it's a fact, okay? And even with outside of the model of some of the Realtor.com and Zillow and BingBangBoom.com and Homes.com and giving leads, agents are massively marketing and sometimes getting leads from mailers or social media or something else like that. So here's what happens. Remember that I said we sit down and do a buyer consultation. When I'm having that buyer consultation, I'm talking to the buyers about representation. And the big reason that I do that is because within that representation is what the buyer's rights are as a consumer, their legal obligation, and things that they should know about buying a house. Like when you go into a house, you should know that there could be audio and video surveillance. That's right. The sellers could be listening to you as you go through the house. So if you walk into the house and you say, oh my God, I love this house so much, and it's so much cheaper than I can afford, it's listed at $500,000 and you write an offer for $475,000. Well, the seller saw you on the Ring doorbell. The sellers saw you on the nanny cam. The sellers listened to you with Alexa, and they know that you love the house and that you can afford more than the $500,000. So you have harmed your negotiations. I think that's pretty darn important for a consumer who may buy a house every 7 years and may not have thought about that to know. And I will tell you from my experience that most of the people that I bring that up to go, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Now, if you just bought a house 2 years ago, or you have a Ring doorbell or a nanny cam or a security cam, you might have already thought about that, right? But most buyers are not thinking like that. And so I think that that's really important to talk to the buyers before we go out and look at houses about things like that. Also, we're talking about what happens once we actually find the house that we like, what that offer process looks like, how much earnest money is going down, because now you're excited. Now you're thinking about the house and your wheels are spinning. And if you're not buying a house every day, every couple of months, this is a lot to take in. So I digress. I always do the buyer consult, but that's not happening in our industry. And for the most part, a couple years ago, October of 2024, we did have a National Association of Realtor guideline come down that says you've got to have something signed before you go to the houses. And a lot of our industry was worried, oh my gosh, now we've got to get things signed. And I will tell you, my business, the majority of the time that I've been doing business, I've been having buyer representation signed prior to going and looking at houses. It tells the buyers what their rights are. And I tell buyers they can fire me at any time. Like if I'm not doing the job for them, they can fire me. But now we've got these sheets that you can, you don't have to have representation, and it's basically like a showing agreement. I don't use them. I don't have to use them, and I don't want to use them. If the buyer doesn't want to work with me, great. But even still, I know for a fact that there are people out there in this industry that are not doing that. How do I know? Because I've had conversations. Buyers don't understand what this is. They've logged on to a website, they clicked contact agent, it went to the highest bidder. That person said, sure, meet me at 123 Main Street. Somehow they got to fumbling around, found my phone number, so they called me. They said, yeah, I'm meeting so-and-so over here. And I go, well, I definitely don't want to interrupt. I don't want to get involved in your contractual agreement with that agent. And they're like, oh, we don't have a contractual agreement. We haven't signed anything. So I promise you, those conversations have happened. So back to why sellers aren't getting feedback. Well, people are clicking on that contact agent. The agents, Pop-Tart, they pop up, they run over to 123 Main Street, they show them the house, and from what I understand, the intent is to build rapport with them, maybe show them 2 or 3 houses, and then have the conversation about representation, which I don't love because, one, you're doing it backwards, and 2, you really don't know what the buyers are looking for. So you might show them 3 houses that they think they wanted to know, but you could pull out through some conversations, maybe some specific areas or features that a buyer may not know about. This is a learning process. And so I think that buyers they're popping by 123 Main Street. The agent, just left his kid's soccer game because he got a phone call that he paid X amount of dollars for, and he needs money, and so he runs over and he shows 2 or 3 houses, and then the buyers are like, well, that's cool, but we're not even pre-approved. I have a part-time job at a gas station, and I don't make enough money. And now this buyer's agent is upset. He's like, man, I just wasted my time, and I got to get back to my kid's game, and they weren't real buyers to begin with. That's one of the reasons why buyers agents or sellers are not getting feedback from the buyers. It's because the inexperienced agents are now upset. Or here's the second thing. They're doing that and they're spending so much time attempting to convert this internet lead to a buyer that they're not really worried about giving the seller feedback. Another reason is that buyer may not have even come by. And so in our scenario today, internet lead pops into this buyer's phone number, text, something. He got an internet lead and he set up a showing at 123 Main Street and we approved it. And then, someone starts looking around or they're still looking on the search engines and they see another house in another town and they want to go look over there, right? Like the likelihood that this is a qualified buyer is very low. And so sometimes those buyers don't even show up. Yeah, that is a fact, Jack. I can tell you that as well because I've been on the side where the sellers had Ring doorbells, nanny cams, security cams, and they're like, hey, no one has come to the house. We cleaned up the house, we got the kids, we packed up the dogs, we're hanging out here at the park, and no one has come to the house. Buyer's agent never canceled the showing, anything like that. So there's a lot of internet leads out there with non-qualified buyers showing up to look at the houses. And, the best feedback ultimately at the end of the day is an offer from a fully pre-qualified buyer. That is the best feedback you will ever get. Now, we talked about legal, and there are some lawsuits that have landed. There are lawsuits that are out there floating around, and it looks like this. Buyer and buyer's agent go and look at a house. Buyer decides, you know what, this house is just not for me. So the buyer's agent gives some feedback, and it's honest feedback. Says, went through the house. The buyer didn't really like the carpet, which is what the buyer said. And the house kind of was a little small and not facing the right or the backyard, whatever the feedback is. It's usually the feedback from what I gather in these lawsuits is it's feedback that was accurate from the buyer. Okay, a couple days go by, they've now looked at several other homes and they realize that house over there was actually a good one and they want to write an offer. So they write an offer. And let's say they write the offer for, the house is listed for $500 and they write it for $475. And the sellers are like, man, that's that guy that said that, my favorite carpet was funny, or they didn't like the neighbors and I love the neighbors, or whatever it is. The sellers are offended by the feedback that was given, right? No big deal, because the buyers are never going to know that the sellers were offended by that. Oh, wait. So, however it goes, in some instances, in some states, buyers and sellers sit in the same room and do sign documents. Or, sometimes the seller gets a package delivered and they might stop by afterwards. Somehow, some way, in these lawsuits, the seller and the buyer meet and they have a conversation. And it comes up that the seller would have conceded more money, would have taken that $475 offer, would have done more repairs. However, the buyer had insulted them in the feedback. And the buyer's like, what feedback? Like, the buyer was walking through with the agent. The agent gave the feedback that the buyer gave. Maybe the agent got permission to give that feedback, maybe not. That's where I think a lot of this is stemming from, is the agent not having that conversation. Perhaps in the consultation that we could have done before we ever went out and looked at these places, right? But the seller was insulted on the buyer's feedback, or the feedback that was provided by the buyer's agent, so they didn't concede. So now the buyer's mad because they paid $25,000 more because their agent gave feedback that they didn't give permission to. And now the buyer's agent is in a lawsuit with the buyer. And there's another reason why people are not giving feedback, because it's such a slippery slope. It really is. We are in a litigious world, my friends. I will tell you, sometimes no feedback is good feedback for a buyer or a buyer's agent, because you never know if you're going to come back to that house. I will tell you, there's been times where we've looked at 3 houses in one day, and the buyer's like, nah. And 4 or 5 days later, the buyer's like, you know what? That one house, we just can't get it out of our mind. Let's go write an offer. And not having given real feedback actually helped us out, because I think that some of those sellers might have been insulted and then maybe not conceded as much or whatever else. So for buyer's agent out there, that's why if I know the agent that's selling the home, I'll give some feedback like that, possibly verbally, feedback from me, right? Because if they'll know the seller, and if they think that it's going to be insulting, maybe they won't give that feedback to the seller. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we do have to be cautious of what we're saying, what we're doing, how we're doing it. There's a good strategy to do all of this. And ultimately, like I said, if you bought a house maybe 7 years ago, your experience might have been different with how you found your agent, who your agent was, than the buyers that are coming through. There's a lot to be said about the difference in buyers agents. Anyways, I hope this explains a little bit. Would love it if you like this video, if you subscribe to the channel. We are constantly bringing value add informational videos to this channel. So hit the notification button, get notified when new videos come out. And if you'd like some specific information on topics, hit me up. BK knows the way.